Hello and welcome to my ISSAY artist feature. This is Karla Bautista and I am here to introduce myself as my artist name, Art of Bodybending. Karla Bautista, a.k.a. Art of Bodybending, is a multidisciplinary artist who aims to stretch the limits of the body and mind through bold performances and social commentary. She embodies flexibility by combining her various art forms simultaneously in her performances that showcase her multitude of personas. A self-taught avant-garde storyteller, singer-songwriter, and contortionist fine art model and pole dancer, she ran away from home at age 15 to pursue the arts that her family refused to support her with. After her adventures and misadventures surviving on her own as a teenager, she got her first opportunities to learn and practice her art at age 20. For the next 7 years, she has been pushing the boundaries of her home country's conservative beliefs to provide avenues for freedom and self-expression for all as a means of healing. Her notable performances include the opening and closing of Fringe Manila 2019 Festival, a performance art piece for MST Performance Art named How Does It Feel, and her prolific portfolio of self-produced music videos created and released against all odds in the middle of the pandemic. She continues to inspire women, witches, and weirdos to get what they deserve and make their stories known, despite all the limits and setbacks they experience from patriarchal societies. Karla lives in Manila and works as a preschool teacher and pole dance instructor. She constantly looks for new spaces to take up her full authentic self and meet collaborators and audiences to share her message with. Welcome, Karla. I am so excited to start this interview. Thank you so much, ISSAY, for setting this up because there are so many questions that I've always wanted to ask myself. So, Karla, you say that you work as a preschool teacher and a pole instructor. Art still isn't your full-time job, even though you've spent your entire salary working two jobs at a time to self-produce all of this music and all of these music videos that aren't generating an income of their own. So my first question that I really want to know is, why aren't you still getting paid? How rude. Oh my goodness, Karla, you are so rude to yourself. I've been through all of this work and you're asking me why I didn't do better? I'm making radical art in a third world country. It's not acceptable for women here to be taking photos naked and all contorted with their legs spread. It's not okay for them to be so vocal and question the ideas of religion and patriarchy that basically runs this whole country. And to top it all off, this country's industries in music and film are run by these patriarchal men in a sea of toxicity, nepotism, sexual harassment, and other sketchy practices. Since the country is too focused on their basic needs to survive from starving, self-actualization is very far down the line in the tastes of the masses. Therefore, the art being produced here is of the commercial mainstream kind. Unconventional art is practiced and enjoyed here, but it's typically reserved for the rich who have all the time and money to produce art like that in a country where it just won't get compensated. But now there are definitely artists who thrive making a lot of money in the arts because they know how to do it commercially. They know how to do it the traditional way. And sadly, I just didn't have any formal education. So my art is completely my own. It's a new form that I'm introducing to the world. And new forms typically have to go through a long period of proving and trusting before it happens. So since I'm not trained in traditional music, traditional dance, it's just not happening yet along the money department, and I'm just hoping that I can support myself and my art long enough to be able to take it to that level. Please, 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 please. And don't be so hard on yourself, my goodness. Okay, I get it. There's systematic equalities that you just have no power over, but hear me out. I'm asking you this because I'm suffering. I'm suffering because of what you're doing. I just want to know, how did you not plan for this? I mean, there's other artists who do unconventional art who are able to make a whole living from it. There must have been a way. So, what did you not do for you to still be starving until now? Hold on, wait up. You don't plan in the middle of a pandemic. It was a crisis that nobody was able to plan for, okay? We made do on what we could. So there was the outer crisis of the pandemic happening and me not being able to do my tons of odd jobs just to keep up my income. There was also the internal crisis, me always being in survival mode because my parents didn't support me when I was a child. They're not supporting me until now. So I have to make my life happen. I have to survive. Most companies in the Philippines won't accept me because I have such a varied skill set and like a varied work history, and they're just looking for somebody who constantly does the same thing over and over again. I was working as a full-time actor already before the pandemic started. I thought I had my life made as a full-time artist. But then our season had to close prematurely because people couldn't leave their houses. And I was in a frenzy of looking for any job at all that would help me pay the bills continuously. I ended up in jobs that were not a great fit for me. These were corporate jobs that were totally not for an artist, but you need to do what you can to survive. So don't judge me like that. Okay, I do have my own mistakes in the planning of my career. I guess I never took myself seriously. I always felt the need to prove myself to other people who didn't see me as an artist, or like, how can you be a musician? You're not even trained. But I just had these songs in my head and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with them if I had the chance to just put them out. But, it's very difficult to have that sort of self-assuredness when you don't have any tangible proof manifesting outside of yourself. And since, everyone was putting me down for not being a quote-unquote real artist, I did so many jobs for free. I sang and danced and acted and hosted and modeled and wrote for free just so I could prove to people that, hey, this is what I do, this is who I am. Since I didn't feel very respected the moment somebody would get me, I felt like that was my one and only chance. And I, took any kind of pay, no matter how small it was. It was absolutely inhumane pay. It was almost nothing, hardly just enough to like cover transportation costs. But I was just at that point so shocked that somebody would actually recognize me as an artist because no one did. It probably might not have been the most logical decision business wise, you're right. But art is just so personal. It's not something you do, it's something you are. So it's super tied to my concept of myself and my self-worth. So because I was not treated with that much respect, it really reflected in the way that I made my business dealings as an artist. And it gave me a very personal advocacy just, to get opportunities to express myself as an artist because it was important to my core being and my personal life. Speaking of business, I didn't even know that by producing my art and hiring people to help me with the technical aspects, I was already starting a business. Because artists don't start making art with the sole intention of making money. You make art from your heart. And I started out at such a low place where I didn't have any arts training, couldn't get art jobs because I didn't meet the conventional requirements, and I was seen as a low value woman because I was a nude model in a conservative country. I had absolutely no funds for getting formal training or networking with artists because I was working a minimum wage job as a teacher. People were making fun of my goals when I shared them, saying that I had no knowledge of the industry, so I had no right to produce my work. I was also exposed to a lot of misogynists who were insecure about the fact that I was calling the shots for my career and my life, And they felt cheated because they were stuck following orders from men more powerful and privileged than them. They didn't recognize my authority as director and producer of my own production. They wouldn't listen to my orders on set, and they would gaslight me into feeling stupid when I asked for revisions during the edits. My self-esteem was totally shot throughout the creation of my music videos. So much so that I neglected the fact that by publishing a piece of music and video, I was becoming the owner of a media product, and I should have taken the steps to protect my intellectual property. I should have had contracts. I should have outlined the deliverables and required them to turn the raw footage to me, because it was my idea, my budget, and my production that they had in their hands. But no. All the time that I released 12 music videos, I was working with friends whom I paid up front because they asked for it, and just trusted them to support me and keep their word. I was wrong. I suffered huge financial and opportunity losses because the people I blindly relied on with no strings attached were not forthcoming at all about the deadlines, the quantity, and the quality of output they could deliver. I wasn't able to market or promote any of my videos properly because my editors would submit the first pass the day before the video was scheduled to be released. I couldn't even move the date because they refused to take revisions for the promotional media with the release date, even though they were at fault for the necessary changes. It was only when my work was put at risk by a collaborator who withheld the footage of my music video because they failed to accomplish it after a year of delay in submission, and after I actually allowed them to delay it for an entire year. They, didn't want to disclose to me that they just never thought to finish it because they wanted to avoid ruining their reputation. They have an up-and-coming production company, and I know a lot of people in their scene, and they just kept making excuses for that entire year instead of just saying, we can't do your video, and they wouldn't return the footage to me. So they had it in their hands, my creation, and I was powerless to demand redress, much less get my footage back, because it was an agreement among friends who claimed they could bring my art out into the world. I couldn't file a grievance against their production house and the Film Development Council of the Philippines because I didn't have a business I could register with them to be a member who can file industry complaints. But I got legal help from a friend and thankfully was able to get my footage back from the threat of a lawsuit. But had I just been aware of the business of creating art, which it is, if you decide to go public with it, it is a business, I would have known what I deserved and what people I hire are obligated to give me, instead of defining my worth on whether or not they choose to give me the quality output I hired them for. This whole time, these mishaps got me thinking that maybe they didn't see me as respectable, and that's why they didn't work professionally. It was my fault. But no. They were neglecting their tasks and committing misconduct to their client. That's what it was. And I failed to see it because of the huge lack of structure in the creative industry and lack of education about the business side of art that should be as common knowledge as other industries. It was through the repeated exploitation of me by my collaborators who took advantage of me that I realized my worth, ironically. They all benefited so greatly from my permissiveness and stupidity to give them good rates that I compromised my basic living expenses for, while I was left financially and emotionally bankrupt. I was capable of carrying that many freeloaders on my back. Why couldn't I carry myself? I totally left myself behind, and I finally saw that I didn't deserve that kind of treatment, and I should ask for the equivalent of all that I put out. You don't need to be a famous star to go get basic human decency, just like you don't have to be a CEO to get basic workers' rights. If you're a working and producing artist, the same rules apply for everyone. And I finally used what I learned to register my business, have contracts for every person I hire, and stay aware of the local artist groups who can provide support just in case I need it. So there's your answer. I'm sorry I gave you a hard life because of it, but I learned from my mistakes. Okay, I forgive you. Well, let me tell you all about my situation that I had to go through while you were doing this, make the world a better place mission. I was living on canned goods. Tell the world exactly what you did to survive producing 12 music videos in the middle of the pandemic on a minimum wage salary that nearly ruined my life. Okay, how to produce 12 music videos during a pandemic with a minimum wage budget. There was no other way to take my own life and put it in jeopardy to produce this. It's like a huge child, and there's only enough nurturance in your body and in the world for one person. It's either you or the baby. So between my music and me, I chose my music. I spent 3 years living on canned goods. I never went to a doctor's appointment even though I really needed it. I didn't take opportunities to improve my career or further myself, develop myself. I didn't even get a haircut. I didn't even have a social life because I couldn't be spending any money, to grab a drink with a friend or go on a date. I needed to put every single peso I had into making my music. So that's how much I loved my child. I decided to forego my own well-being and health just so I could produce that child, even if no one really wanted it. I was so happy to have it out in the world. Okay, so now that I have been living on the very bare minimum, now that I have taken from my own basic needs to create a fund for my music video production, how do you make an entire production with such a small budget? Well, basic financial literacy, stick to your budget. I knew what the stakes were, and I understood that if I wanted this to happen, I would have to find a way to make my vision happen in the absolutely cheapest way possible. So what are the most expensive things in making a video production? Well, number 1, you have the venue. Number 2, you have the crew. And number 3, you have the videographers and the editors. So number 1, the venue. I had very complex concepts that required going back in time, that required magical concepts, and I was able to get everything I wanted by renting themed motels that basically charged around $100 for 12 hours. So I had to be really, really smart and creative. I had to find a way. How can I make this concept of mine fit in with, the landscape and the set of what that motel looked like? Fortunately, a friend of mine was the owner of that chain of motels, and she would give me discounts. She would sometimes even sponsor my venue. So special thanks to Victoria Court, that chain of motels. Without them, I could never have made this happen. So the second part is the crew. Well, since I didn't have enough money to pay, an entire company of crew members, since I was only making as much as the minimum wage person in a whole company, I just gave all the labor to myself. I was the producer, I was the director, I was the assistant director, I was the talent, I was the makeup artist, I was the set designer, I was the costume designer, I was the maintenance person, I was the logistics person. I was carrying everything with my bare hands, cleaning things up, sweeping, taking out the trash. I did everything, almost everything by myself, with the exception of my videographers and my editors, because I don't have that skill set. So my videographers and my editors, some of them are quite close friends of mine. So I really, made a deal with them, told them, what can I offer you in return? So I was bartering my time, I was bartering my services for free. And just giving as much of myself as I could, even though it was so emotionally and career taxing, just so they would do this for me. And that combination of things somehow made it work. I basically was comatose, my real self, for 3 whole years, because I put my life on hold to make this happen, because this is me and I want to see it out in the world. Oh, yeah, well, thanks for doing that and abandoning me in the process. If I may ask, if it's alright with you, why did you need to do this? And do this to me? I didn't mean to hurt you. You know, I didn't really think it would have cost me any more suffering than I was already experiencing every minute of my life. You know, I wasn't even living my life anyway. The odds were all stacked up against me, and I knew that there was next to no chance of me entering the music and film industry to build my career. You know, I tried as best as I could, and it really cost me more harm than good, like with all the harassment and abuse I experienced. And you know, since I couldn't find those opportunities in the existing industry, I had to create them for myself. I had to produce and publish my own work and give myself a chance at a time where no one else would. I find that in a world that has excluded me everywhere, that has pushed me to the most insignificant of roles, or even pretended that I didn't exist, I had a mission to myself to be in this world and share my story and take up space. It's so painful not being able to connect with people because they don't understand you. When you have so much inside of you to share and you just know that it is part of them, like it is connected universally to the world. And the only way I could do that was to create my own artwork. So, in a way, you know, even if people couldn't understand, there was a chance that they might, and at least it was out there. So it could reach someone somewhere who could understand it. I am a lot to handle. It's not like you can understand the fullness of me in one conversation. So I really needed to reveal myself and tell my story in an abstract, symbolic form. That's the only way I could have done myself the least amount of justice. It's not as much as I hoped it would, but it was the best I could do. Okay, there you go with your heroic, bleeding heart. I love the art speech. That I exist to preserve a culture. I exist to tell a story to the world. Thank you so much for your services to society at my own expense as an individual human being who also wanted just to have a normal life. But I understand where you're coming from, and I've accepted the role that I've had to play in your self-sacrificing. Not that this is gonna go on forever. You know what? I really want to know more about your purpose. Please tell everyone about it so I can make peace with all the suffering I've had to go through for you to achieve this. I do what I do so I can record the history of human experience as it happens in my own life, you know, because media and culture, they're so selective, they're so censored, and I want to preserve the truth that's universal to all of us in the form of my abstract art with a hidden message. And I know that what I'm doing is right, even if everyone tells me that it's wrong, because art is about creating something new, and your uniqueness will be lost in following the paths of others. I just want people to look beyond the conventions and perceptions of what the human body is and what it's capable of. Society tends to sexualize women and their bodies, whether they wear clothing or not, and they frame this sexual expression as negative. Or when women are outspoken like me, unafraid to challenge the structures in place, they silence us by shaming us because of that sexuality. So I want to strip off all of that pretense in my art about women and sex and how sex is bad. I want to experiment with my body to create new shapes and new narratives, which are probably not new, but rather forgotten. And I hope that the people who see what I create with my body and what I say with my voice can remember just how much power they have over their own body and voice. That is my dream. I want to bend the rigid structures of society so people like me can not only survive but thrive and share our value for others to find in themselves. Well, that certainly gives me comfort knowing the huge ideals of your purpose. It makes me understand that my suffering actually had meaning. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Art of Bodybending. I have exposed her mutilation of her own self just to create what she has created in line with her purpose. But don't worry, guys. She has promised to be kinder to me. I have forced her to take care of herself first. We'll be on a little break, little hiatus to take care of myself until I've fully recovered, and we will return better than ever with some surprises in store. I can't wait to show you what I've been working on. See you then.